Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter.
Those resurrection eggs are a tradition in a lot of different churches that do them, and I did it last year, and I almost decided not to do it, but one of the important things in Christian education with children is that they need to learn these narratives, these stories. They need to be able to tell the story of what happened to Jesus over and over and over. How many of you grew up going to Sunday school? And every Easter you had a speech, you had something to remind you of what was happening, and you learned those stories. In my day, we had little flannel boards with the little figures and the stories, and there was no electronics or PowerPoint in those days, or even fancy resurrection eggs. So we are grateful for our children and for the people who work with them every week. They have an activity today. We're going to have an Easter egg hunt. But our rotational model chooses a theme, and we plan curriculum around that theme. And we have a team of 6 people who work with the kids and take turns. So it's gone from Sue Heisinger being just one person doing it, and now we have a full team of people who are sharing in that work. So I have a young woman who was a little child in my children's choir at my home church at Light of the World Christian Church in Indianapolis. Hillary Powell. Hillary is a reporter for a South Bend, Indiana television station. Hillary and her older sister, who is an attorney, were the cutest little girls. They were always wonderfully, beautifully dressed, little dresses, ankle socks and patent shoes, and lots of ribbons in their hair. And one of the great joys of being in this area is that I get to see them from time to time. I follow Hillary on Twitter. I'm coming down with a cold again, people said. Pray for my voice. I follow Hillary on Twitter. Hillary is what we call an eyewitness reporter. Hillary is always in the field, on the scene. She's not an anchor. Whenever something is happening in South Bend, Hillary is there. And whenever Hillary is on the scene, she answers those journalistic questions. Who, what, when, where, and sometimes why. Hillary is always asking, what did you see? What happened? Who was there? I love Hillary's little reports. She's always showing video clips. And as it turns out, last night she posted that her team had been given some sort of award for the best feature news team. So Hillary is a good eyewitness reporter. In these days and times when we have cell phones and video camera capability, no matter what's happening in the world, somebody is pulling out a cell phone to capture the moment, be it a violent shooting or last week's unfortunate incident on the United Airlines flight here in Chicago, when the poor man was dragged off. And I've since learned, that you may not know this, he has a concussion. He lost teeth, broke his nose. Not a simple thing. Video camera on the phone enabled us all to see exactly what happened. Eyewitness testimony in a courtroom is generally relied upon, although more and more people are saying, well, our memories aren't as good. You can't necessarily count on the fact that in a moment of high stress and trauma, that you will remember things exactly as they happened. What you see also depends on the perspective, where you stood, how close you were, whether or not there were objects blocking your view. But in general, an eyewitness testimony is pretty powerful stuff. And in today's world, if Jesus had been alive, can you imagine? We would have video of miracles. Can you imagine having a video of Lazarus having been raised from the dead? Or a video of Jesus telling the leper, take up your mat and walk. Or a video before the leper goes to the temple and after he comes back and his skin is cleansed. Lots of wonderful stories that we have in the Bible are there because someone saw what happened, and someone kept telling other people what had happened. If you had lived in the Bible times, or if Jesus were alive today, and you had an extraordinary experience with Jesus, I'm sure that you too would be telling, yes, he healed my son. He came to my house to eat. I was there when Lazarus was raised from the dead. If you had known somebody like Jesus, you would have been following him from place to place. Back in the day, they only got word of mouth that Jesus was in the next town. They could walk about 10 or 15 miles a day. So if you're in Tiberias and Jesus is in Bethany, which is just around the bend of Galilee, it would take you a day and a half to get to him. But you would go because you would have heard what other people had seen. People who were eyewitnesses to the miracles and the love of Jesus talked about it over and over and over. That's why so many people came to find Jesus, was because of the eyewitness testimony of so many people who saw him, talked with him, were blessed by him, were healed by him, were forgiven by him, people to whom he just showed compassion. On this amazing, amazing Sunday morning, we find three women who've come to the tomb. We don't usually preach from Matthew, at least I don't, and I decided to preach from it this year because I don't usually preach from it. I like John's account of the gospel because he tells Mary Magdalene to go and tell the disciples. Mary Magdalene goes to talk to Peter. They don't believe her. They come back. And it's not until they've seen it for themselves that they actually believe what she has to say. And there are lots of important things to say about the fact that the first real evangelist was a woman. I like that fact. I think it's important to note that at a time when women's testimony wasn't even allowed in court or before a local rabbi judge, Jesus entrusted this major story to these women. And he does it here in Matthew as well. But there are some interesting effects that happen in this particular story in Matthew. We've got an earthquake, a great light, guards that are shaking and fall dead. We don't know if they were playing dead or if they were just totally freaked out by the earthquake and the bright lights. Can you imagine just sitting here all of a sudden there being an earthquake? And what if a flash of light came from that cross? That moment would be seared on your mind and your memory forever. You would always be talking about, remember that Sunday in church when there was the earthquake and there was this big light that flashed from the cross? Do you remember how Pastor Terry kept talking as though nothing had happened? Did she see it? Did she not see it? You would be telling that story over and over and over and over again. The resurrection, the witness of the resurrection, was not only joy, but it was really a form of trauma. What if you were to go to your mother's grave, those of you whose mothers have passed on, and there was an angel sitting on the headstone, and you were just going to leave your flowers and pay your respects, and someone said to you, she's not here. She's risen. Fear would seize your heart. Did someone steal the body? What has happened? The angel essentially says to these women, why are you here? Jesus isn't here. He is risen as he said. Can you imagine, through your sanctified imagination, what those women must have experienced? Here they were going to show love for someone tragically and brutally taken from them. These are the same women who were there at the cross witnessing the horror. The kids were talking about how horrible, the nails, whipping, In their own little way, they were responding to horrors that we can't even imagine. These women had seen and been traumatized by the images of Jesus hanging on a cross. The most cruel form of execution ever known to man throughout history. Some of you may have lost children. My niece, the widow of my nephew, lost her son just the end of last week, riding his bike, hit and run driver. He was 16. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine being Mary, seeing my son beaten to within an inch of his life, groaning and dying on a cross. Particularly when in my mind I would have been remembering the promises of the angel that my child was going to be the Messiah. The eyewitness to that trauma makes the eyewitness to the resurrection all the more powerful. They know what they saw. They know what they experienced, and it's the power of that eyewitness testimony that has come down to us through the centuries. It first went to the disciples. Matthew tells us that the angel said, "Go ahead and go to Galilee. Jesus will meet you there." We know through Scripture that Jesus stayed on the earth for 40 days and appeared many times to his disciples and to other believers. Every single disciple, except Judas, who had killed himself after he betrayed Jesus. Every single disciple was an eyewitness to the resurrected Lord. It's interesting, in Matthew, the women kneel down and worship him and touch his feet. In John, they're not allowed to touch him because he says, "I've not yet ascended to his Father." But the power of that eyewitness testimony has come down to us so powerfully. We know that the disciples, every single one except for John, was martyred. And the reason they were killed was because they refused to deny the resurrection. I say this every Easter, but I think it's true. You can be part of a movement and be really just all with it, down with the protest. But if this had been a lie, if they had not believed in the resurrection, do you think they would have gone to their deaths for a lie? That's some powerful stuff when you say, "I will not deny what my own eyes have seen." It wasn't a dream, it wasn't a vision. I saw him. Many of them ate with him. They watched him eat. He cooked breakfast for many of them on the shore one day. These women saw him. And just like you would talk about an earthquake and a flashing light for the rest of your lives, these women, for the rest of their lives, said, "He lives. I have seen him. He lives. I have seen him." And for 40 days, Jesus walked the earth so that more and more people would have that testimony, that eyewitness account to say, "He lives. I saw him. He lives." Paul reminds us that had Jesus not been risen, our faith would be in vain. Many traditions have a place where they go to mark the tomb of their prophets. There is a tomb where the Buddha is buried. There is a tomb where they believe Muhammad is buried. We don't know. Even if you go to Israel, there are a couple of places where they believe Jesus was buried, but we don't honor that place as though he is still there. Why does that even matter? Because Jesus promised that because he lives, we too shall live. The victory of the cross is the victory over the power of sin and death in our lives. Is everything perfect? Do we still continue to sin? Yes, but the power of sin to control us has forever been broken. When we believe in Jesus, we have the gift of the Holy Spirit who guides us and helps us and teaches us how to do those things that reflect the love of Christ. How to be loving, how to be kind, how to be patient, how to have enough compassion to do the work that he commanded us to do. to take care of the widow and the orphan and the stranger, to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, care for the sick, visit those who are imprisoned, fight for justice, welcome all to our table. It's because of that victory. The open tomb represents that victory and the power that we can all have by walking with Jesus as his followers. He prayed in John 17 for us, those who would become believers because of the testimony of the early Christians. We are believers because their testimony was so powerful. I wonder, who will be impacted by your testimony? None of us have seen the risen Lord, but I pray that all of us have experienced his love in some way. Maybe you were comforted in a difficult moment. Maybe you saw God provide for you when money was tight. Maybe you saw God heal a loved one. Maybe you saw God keep you even though that loved one wasn't healed. Maybe you saw God bring you through situations that probably would have driven you mad had you not been reminded and comforted by the great love of God. There is something that you have seen, and you know what you saw. You know what you've experienced. You know what you felt. Tell somebody. I'm not saying take tracts and go door to door. I'm not that kind of evangelist. And most of you probably aren't either. But I found that there will be moments in your life when you'll be confronted with a situation when it will make all the difference in the world for you to share with somebody what you have seen, what you know, what God has done for you. And in that moment, I hope you'll be able to share your story, your testimony. And that person will look at you and say, she knows what she saw. She clearly knows what she's experienced. And like that crazy little scene in that movie when Harry met Sally, we want people to say, I'll have what she's having. What is this that makes this person able to withstand life's difficulties? It's the power and joy and hope that we find because of the empty tomb, because of a risen Christ, because he walks and talks with each one of us if we're open to that relationship. I find myself being more and more comfortable in telling stories about difficult times in my life because I've seen how it can make a difference for somebody to know what I saw and to know what I experienced. On this Easter Sunday, I hope that you'll be reminded of those moments in your life when God has just been there in ways that you can't explain, but you know it was God. You can't even maybe put it into words right now, but there will come a time when your testimony will matter so much to someone else. Don't forget the example of these first eyewitnesses. They know what they saw. They told everyone. And they didn't stop telling, and then they tried to live the life that would please the Lord that they loved. I pray that that's our response to the power of the empty tomb today. Live the life that the Lord would love, and don't be afraid to tell everyone what you've seen. Amen.